excited.
Yeah.
Fpehs.
They voted to leave it.
Okay, as you know, we're here tonight to celebrate, should say observe, the fact that 50 years ago tonight, we were getting hit by Tropical Storm Agnes. And I'm going to kind of give you what I have from a program that we did 10 years ago, which was the 40th anniversary. And it's been updated to the 50th anniversary. And then we're going to play 2 videotapes right at the end. One tape was done by Brenda Wayne Sedgin, and then just recently, Dave Krug's son has donated another one, video that we didn't know existed until about a month ago. So we've never ever shown it before, and so we'll end the program with that one. But let me get started here. Let's hope it all works. Just to set the scene, 50 years ago, here, all right. That's about how it sounded 50 years ago tonight, and it rained and rained and rained hard as it could. Move on to the next slide. Kind of set the scene. I want to remind everybody, 50 years ago, over at Gilmer Christian's Gulf Station, gas was 33 cents a gallon. You can see it right there in that picture. McDonald's had yet to come to Farmville. The theater was still downtown. It was a 50-year-old theater. It finally fell down. Walmart had not come to town. 7-Eleven had not located in Farmville, and of course, I don't know how we made it, but 50 years ago we didn't have cell phones. So it's hard to believe we lived through all that with no cell phones. And luckily we do have 2 videos from that day. 50 years ago this week, a lot of people were glued to the TV. National TV news was Mr. Nixon and the Watergate affair. Hard to believe it's been 50 years ago. Locally, the headlines, you can see this banner across Main Street, the wind had twisted it, but it says Firemen's Convention, June 21st. The fire department had planned, and it was a top news story in Farmville Rural 50 years ago. The firemen were going to host 37 other fire departmental groups to come to Farmville and be the statewide fire department convention. So that was a big deal for the Farmville Rural. Of course, you see down to the right what happened with the firehouse. They didn't have a convention there. They ended up having it up on the hill at the Armory, which was a safe place to have it. But there's a close-up picture of the 33-cent gas sign over at Gilmer Christian. This is a picture of just a random picture I picked up along the way, but my first experience with flooding in Farmville, I was about the age, probably this young man on the bicycle. That's not me. Too much hair. But I lived up on top of 2nd Street, and it looked like every time it rained hard, the creek would flood here. We were all riding bicycles down there and riding around in the water. That was my first real experience, and it wasn't uncommon for 2nd Street to flood. So, let's see what we got here. Okay. in this storm, when all this came about 50 years ago, I wasn't even paying any attention to the weather. It was the last thing on my mind probably. But the tropical storm, or I put this on here so I wouldn't forget it, it was classified as a hurricane part of the time, and at other times the weather people would change it to a tropical storm. So it actually started out down here in the Yucatan Peninsula on June the 14th. And then it came on up and crossed into Florida on the 19th of June. You can see it travel on up the East Coast. And by the time it got into off the coast of North Carolina and Virginia, I guess the intensity had dropped to where they called it tropical storm. These little papers that Bob has handed out, on the front of it, it says Hurricane Agnes, and then you open it up and start reading it, and they're calling it Tropical Storm Agnes. So it was back and forth. Then it went out over the ocean and intensified and came back up into New York and Pennsylvania. And it really got rough up there again, but it kept on and they kept tracking it until July the 6th. So it lasted 3 weeks. So it was the second hurricane of the year in 1972 for the Atlantic region. It also happened to be the first day of summer and the longest day of the year, just like it is today. 10 years ago, about this time, Bob was working over Farmville. I was in the car business. You were the Earl, right?
When?
10 years ago.
10 years ago, oh yeah.
And I got a call to come down to the Hurl. They wanted to do a 40-year story on the flood. So I ended up going down there and they taped me and wrote a 2-page article, which is in that paper y'all have, basically telling what I was doing that day. And I'll go ahead and tell you what I was doing that day. My daddy ran Bob's Supermarket, a grocery store here in town. And that particular morning, I had been down to the courthouse with my daddy. We were buying some land. And everybody downtown was talking about, oh, it's going to flood, it's going to flood. I'm thinking, flood, you know. I was in denial, I guess, but it was a big to-do downtown up there. Oops, where'd that go? So, let me see here. Let me get back up here. Get it on back up here to this. Like where would be? Come back on the screen, everywhere, on here. So anyway, we finished up that business and we came out of the lawyer's office. It was pouring down rain. And by the time we got back to the store, people were coming in like, you know how people do when it snows, and buying and acting crazy. Well, that was how it went the rest of the day. People were coming in, oh, it's going to flood, it's going to flood, it's going to flood. I'm thinking, yeah. So anyway, we had 2 shifts of people, and I was working on the morning shift, so at 2 o'clock I could go home. So I went home, and so did the rest of the people that worked with me that morning. And I hadn't been home about an hour, so my dad called and said, round up everybody you can and bring them back. It's going to flood, and we've got to save this stuff on the lower shelves. We've got to lift everything up so we don't lose anything. So I went around, got a couple guys, and we all piled back up in the store and started working, trying to save things. Of course, I'm still thinking, I'm looking out over the big parking lot, and it's raining like hell, but I said, it'll never get up in here. Anyway, we were moving on, and made my daddy happy, and everybody worked and tried to put everything that was fairly expensive up a foot or so. Cleaned all the bottom shelves off and everything. Long before supper time, it started looking pretty bleak. And I guess it was, it made 9 o'clock. Police started coming around, National Guard started coming around. Finally, about 9 o'clock, National Guard, police, several other groups of people came and said, "You got to evacuate the building. Get out of here. Flooding is imminent." So they ushered everybody right out, right? I mean, it wasn't like go get your pocketbook or anything. Out. Myself and 2 other people, we just hid back. In a few minutes they were gone, everybody was gone. So then we said, well, we'll just keep on, hang around here and see what happens. And we got into the beer case, started drinking beer. That was needed to help us work better, I guess you could say. But anyway, all this saving we were doing was for nothing almost, because they had told us that the power company would cut the power off. I'm thinking, that 3/4 of the walls there were full of frozen food cases, produce cases, dairy cases. And when they cut the power off, all the meat starts going bad, all the frozen food, everything is defrosting. And I'm thinking, well, hell, there goes half the inventory right there. Well, we stayed on, drank on, partied on, and it got dark, and we were with flashlights, and a little while we saw it creep across the highway, then it started creeping up the parking lot. Turns out the floor level was a foot higher than the street. So it took a while, but it eventually inched on up there. Of course, my daddy didn't know we were still there either. And they had left so quick. They left the money and everything in the cash register. We had 3 cash registers with money in them. They just walked out. So anyway, finally, around midnight, it started coming in the building. We were doing what we could do to block it under the doors. We never thought about the drains in the floors. The water starts bubbling up through the floors, flying up through the commodes. I said, forget it. Just partied on. we ended up, we just gave up basically. I mean, we couldn't get out of there. I looked out on the parking lot in my car. The water was up over the headlights of the car. So no getting out of there. So we laid down on checkout. We had 3 checkouts, and 3 of us, we spent the night. Woke up the next morning laying in water. So we went out into the parking lot and we said, how do we get out of here? We couldn't go down toward the hospital because the current was pulling you that way. So we went on up towards the nursing home, taste freeze area. And we could see when we rounded the corner up around the taste freeze area that we would get out of there by Ellington Oil and nursing home area. Before we could get back, the rescue squad and the flotilla, the Coast Guard, called us out into the water. We were swimming up 3rd Street. And caused our head gone too. And they gave us hell for being, wanted to know why we were in the water, because they had it blocked off on both ends by the National Guards and the police. They said, how did y'all get over here? We told them we spent the night in the store, and they said, we'll get held back up in there. And we'll get you after we finish evacuating Hockey Manor. So that's what we did. I guess an hour or so later, the boat came and got us. By then, I had gotten money out of the cash registers, and I don't know what made me do it, but I took all the coins, all the rolls of coins. That bag was so heavy I couldn't hardly lift it up in the boat. Then they took us to the hospital. I thought I was going home, and they made us go through and get I was born. But everybody survived. But on with the show. This is what Main Street looked like. This picture was taken by Dave Crew the next day, June 22nd. And it looks like peaceful. You never know that the end of Main Street is flooded. Over here behind the courthouse is flooded. Back over here near Crude Stage is flooded. But right there in the middle of the town, everything was just normal. So let's go back down here. We're going back up to where we were. When I got called into the Herald to do my story, Bob, I think, suggested, or somebody told me that Sonny Parrott had taken a lot of pictures. So Bob set up this photo shoot, and I went down to Paris, and Bob took this picture. You remember that, Bob?
Yep.
And Sonny gave me, it looks like it says, 32 color pictures that he walked all the way around Farmville and took that day. And I took them home, scanned them, took them back to Sonny, but there's a picture that appeared in the Farmville Herald 10 years ago. I want to thank Bob for bringing all these Hurricane Agnes
Supplements.
Yeah, copies. Bob got them and the Herald went out of business. I guess they just gave them to you, right?
Well, yeah.
Since you wrote it,
Yeah.
put it
They
together.
come get them, we throw them away.
Yeah.
I'm on my way.
Yeah, so everybody tonight got one, I hope. But in the paper you have that little copy. The Herald, I don't know whether Herald divided the town up into 4 flood zones, or I did, but one of us copied the other one 10 years ago. And so I'm going to tell you about the 4 flood zones in Farmville here in a minute. In your little book, that's a 2-page story they wrote from what I told them happened to me that day. I didn't tell them everything, but I told them most everything. They couldn't print it all. There's a lot of stuff in the Farmville Herald, follow-up stories and so on, and you can go online to VirginiaChronicles.com, VirginiaChronicle.com, and type in the word flood and it'll pull them all up for you. I just put this slide in because I plan on posting this on the YouTube channel. People out there watching on YouTube will be able to see this and go to the site and pull up some. So here's Main Street. Everything looks calm. This is how it was that day, and this is going to move along in a minute, I think, and show you what was just out of the side of the camera here in just a second. Take a little second here, I think. There you go. Right over behind the courthouse, that's what it looked like, 1 block away. And going in the other direction, that's what it looked like. Let's see, and then right over in the shopping center, the only shopping center we had at the time, part of it was underwater. So it was kind of deceiving looking at the Main Street pictures because all around it, everything was covered by water. So, location versus elevations. What I'm saying here is, should this ever happen again, and we're not saying it will, but it should, it's a good idea to know your elevations. Like I got caught, I had no idea that the water would ever rise up and catch me in the flood, but it did. So what I want to say is, 50 years ago, we didn't have all these topo maps of the town, but since the big flood of 72, they've now, FEMA and different things, including the town of Farmville, they have all these maps, and it shows where the flood water actually reached in 1972. This is just a sample of one of the shots of it. But the water came up, you see down right around here, it says 312. Best I can figure, it came up to 315 foot mark. But just to be, here's another map that the town has up, and you can zoom in, zoom out. If you have any questions about your business or where you live, you can say, am I in the flood zone or not? Be aware. After the flood, I had never thought about the elevations of downtown Farmville versus all around us. But if you think about it, when you come downtown, you are coming downtown. Like here by Walmart, the elevation is 448 feet above sea level. Here by Sunchase Theater, 434. The Buffalo is sitting at 438. And out here west of town by the fairgrounds is 466. When you get in here by the visitor center, it's like 320, something like that. So everything that falls rain-wise, it all runs right downtown. So somebody told me Farmville was sitting in a bowl. I had never thought about that. So our flood water that comes into Farmville when it does flood, basically we're in the Appomattox floodplain. And I looked on the map, and basically the Appomattox River starts at Holiday Lake. So anything that falls in Appomattox is coming through this river about a block over from us right here. So when this storm came up the east coast, it was throwing rain over this way, coming to the west side of the storm, I guess. Everything that fell down in this area over here, it was filling up the river down here, and of course it was throwing it way up here to Appomattox. So all that water up from this end had to come on down through Buckingham. So it's dropping from 485, coming through Buckingham, falls around 300 feet above sea level. It goes through a million, 200, and by the time it's getting down to Petersburg and Hopewell, it's getting close to sea level. But the problem is, as it rains down on this end, the river's filling up and it's starting to back up. So that's our problem, is the water backing up. When this river, which starts up in Appomattox, goes through Farmville, through Amelia, Hopewell, Petersburg, and it's going right on down, coming out into Chesapeake Bay. Well, as it gets full down here, it's backing up and backing up. It's pouring in here and there's nowhere to go, so it comes right on back up. Floods out into Farmville. So right after the flood, they were talking about building all these dams or dikes, so they had the government come in, I'm sure, possibly think about what could be done, but there's really nothing that can be done. There's topography here, we're in the bowl, they can't build a dam all the way around Prince Edward County. So we're just,
And Jimmy, what
Yes,
seems
sir.
to be the problem with Farmville is the opening right there where the trail is.
yeah,
Between the two embankments, there's that narrow opening. That's what causes it to back up really bad here in Farmville.
when the Appomattox gets full, the water's going to back up a little buffalo right there by the firehouse, and it's going to back up down here by DMV, come up behind DMV. So that's your problem. So when you look at the water in some of these videos and pictures, when it first started, the water was coming down Little Buffalo and down here, starting up at behind Food Line and comes on down and runs by Mockadoo's and then behind DMV. But water's flying down through there. But then when the river's full, it starts backing up. And then all of a sudden, when it's really getting bad, it's still. So some of the pictures of water look like it's still, and some of it depends on when it was taken. So when the water starts getting still, you know you're in trouble. As long as it's flowing pretty good. Here's a kind of a map. These green lines are the roads through Farmville. Here's the Appomattox River coming on down. Well, here's the Grocer's Branch, which, like I said, starts behind Food Lion, comes on down behind McDonald's, by Marcadugas, down behind DMV, and then flows into the Appomattox. The Little Buffalo starts behind Ham Sydney College, and it winds this way down, comes out here right by Wilkes Lake, comes on down by the firehouse today, and then over here into the creek. Well, when this river gets full, these two little branches back up into Farmville. So all these yellow areas are where the water comes up into town. And we're talking about the water levels. I never thought about anybody keeping up with the water levels other than hearing it on the radio sometimes. You would hear the water's about to reach flood stage or this stage or that stage. You would always hear that on WFLO. Well, we won't be hearing that anymore. But here in Farmville, they call it the action stage. It's 12 feet. Flood stage 16. Moderate flood stage 20. And a major flood is 25 feet or more. So you might say, well, where are they measuring it? There's a picture of the Cumberland Bridge, and there used to be, this might still be, there's this big stone thing, and they had it painted up the side of it like a tape measure, and they could stand on the bridge and see how high the water was. Well, then along came these new electronic boxes like you see here. There's a better picture of it. There it is as it stands today. And if you come across the bridge, if you look at it, it's right there. And that thing is taking measurements all the time, and I guess transmitting them over the phone lines, internet, to some government station that's keeping up with the measurements. There's a good close picture of it. So there is somebody keeping an eye on it. Here's a picture of, like, here's how high it got, 315 downtown. That's a visitor center. This is Main Street. Well, Main Street is approximately 320 feet, and it got up 315 approximately. So almost got Main Street, but not quite. But came up almost to the white part of this A&P building. And here's the manager, Mr. what was his name? Yeah, Mr. Walter Hamlet. He's pointing to it. It came up to the numbers over top the door. So it looks like it's about 8 feet deep at the A&P. And so keeping the records. I went online 10 years ago when I was doing all of this, and I took the measurements that were posted online and I copied them, and then I sorted them. The deepest on record here, and I kept it, I did it all the way down to the 12-foot mark, which is flood stage, beginning of the flood stage here. So they started keeping the records in Farmville in 1926. So 10 years ago, I believe over 100 different occasions we had reached flood stage in Farmville. So that's about every other year we have a minor flood. So you can go online and research all that if you're so interested. But from those figures, I said, well, let me see kind of what we had, just a major one. So in 1923, which was 3 years before they started keeping the records, it got up to approximately 28 feet. So it was 99 years ago. 1940, it got up to approximately 23 feet. 1944. In 1971, it got to 21 feet. And this is 72, the night we're talking about 50 years ago, almost reached 30 feet. And in 96, it got back up to 24 feet. And it's not unusual to see it flood on 2nd Street. Sometimes it gets up in 3rd Street, maybe a couple of inches deep. I don't really consider that a flood. That's just the water fills up the street for a little while and it goes right back down. But in 1972, a lot of people were saying, oh, that was a 50-year flood. It'll happen once every 50 years. Other people said it was a 100-year flood. And that was fairly common talk 50 years ago. Well, it's been 99 years since it came in 23. And tonight we've made it 50 years since it happened. So I guess we bypassed the 50-year mark. So let's hope we don't have any more. But here's just another thing I did. We got up to the 16-foot range 29 times. This is 10 years ago. 17-foot range 17 times, and so on, right on up. So you can see it's a fairly common event to have flooding here. But it's real unusual to have it real deep. 50 years ago, 1972, there was about a month before we had the big flood of 72, we had 6.78 inches of rain in that May. We were in a drought and then it rained 3 or 4 times that month. So the ground was already pretty wet in May. And then the big flood came, dropped another 7 or 8 inches. So you can see why we flooded in 72 basically. This is just out of the newspaper, and y'all have this in that little booklet Bob gave you. So we had a big rain in May, but it was distributed out over at least 3 different rains. And then in June, we had 7.5 inches, you might say, within 26 hours. That caused the big flood. Like I tell you, we have 4 flood zones in Farmville, and I will go through them 1, 2, 3, and 4 quickly. Farmville Rural County. I don't know, like I said, I don't know whether Hurl set that up or I set it up and they copied me, I can't remember, but flood zone number 1, these pictures are in the booklet that you have there. This is what I call the grossest drainage area. Starts behind Food Line, comes on down through behind McDonald's, on down through South Street basically, and on down by Dowdy Furniture, DMV, and into the river. And there's what it looked like in zone 1. And you can see down here at the bottom is a post office. Got right up to the post office. You got right up here to the courthouse was flooded. There's the firehouse. We've seen a picture of that. The water got in the back, in the basement of Leggett's. There's Leggett's when it was downtown, and it went in the basement there. And it came right up behind it. Parrots. When Sonny Parrott told me they got up under his building, I said, well, boy, I was getting close to Main Street. But there it is, close up of the A&P. The water actually, in that picture we saw with Mr. Hamlet, it was up over that little door right there. Some of these pictures were taken the next day. The water had gone down a foot or so. But here's looking down through there, standing up towards Main Street, looking back over here towards the post office. And that's the visitor center to orient you, or looking from the post office parking lot back towards Main Street there. Over there, the furniture, this picture appeared in the Earl. When the water got up there, it got up almost to the ceiling, and all the furniture floated around, and when it went down, you can see what a mess they had. Zone 2. Taylor Manufacturing Company, and across the street there is W.A. Price, which is now Post Appliance Company, Billy's place there. Today this is the canoe store. How appropriate. And this is, of course, on the Cumberland side, looking back over towards Main Street. There's the old shoe factory building. The aerial shot that was taken there. Somebody took the town officials up in an airplane, I believe, and they took these aerial photos, and y'all have these big pictures in your booklet too. But again, here's Taylor Manufacturing Company, or the canoe store. Here's Colston's. This building is now Price Supply. I guess it was old Kilcare Laundry. And this right here is High Bridge Trail. Didn't come over the railroad tracks, but it was getting close. I took this picture the other day over at Billy's. And
Wow.
there's a mark right there, that mark right there, or the mark right here. They had marked it. If you go over and look at it close, you can tell it stained the sheetrock walls, and somebody had written 68 inches to the floor. So it's 5 foot 8 inches deep inside Colston's. 50 years later, you can still see the mark on the wall. So essentially, there's a picture here taken from the railroad tracks at the times, and the High Bridge Trail looking north. All that in there was flooded. So this right here would be flooded today. Came right up to right across there in First Street. Here's an area I had never thought about flooding. This is North Street. Farmville Presbyterian Church parking lot. This was behind Amish Originals today. This over here would be behind Karen's Bridal. This big old tobacco warehouse has been torn down and has a parking lot there. The water got all over here in North Street. And looking at it from above, I'm sure rainwater collected, but also it could have come through there under that bridge and basically flooded all this area in here. These buildings along Main Street, some of them had basements, and they filled up with water. So today, this is the Farmers Market here. This is where the old tobacco warehouse sat. Another picture of it. The time where Greenfront is now, I believe it was Dollar General there. Silco was there. Maybe both, I think, over time, but during the flood, their basement got flooded, and they set all their stuff out in the parking lot to dry, it looks like. Looking at it from Main Street, this is a Sleeping Bee building now. You can see how it just filled that bottom up back there, and the water would have filled this area here under the underpass. Fourth zone is out west of town. This is the hospital. Today this will be the fire department. This is 3rd Street going on up. The library is out there now. Well, I was in that building right there. Couldn't get over here because the water was sucking you down that way. But that's where it was. This picture was taken a little bit further up on Hospital Lawn. There it is from up above. There's a High Bridge Trail today. photographs have, people continue to bring photographs over the years, and I've kept them. So I've gotten pictures from 1940 and 1996 also, which I'll share. 1923, there are no pictures that have ever come into being, but in the Farmville Herald, they reported on it in the 1923 Farmville Herald, and it describes, again, that West 3rd Street was blocked. People had to get into Farmville by walking the railroad bridges. And so it sounds very similar to what we had in 72, so I estimated it to be around 28 feet. In 1940, people always talk about, oh, the big flood of 1940, the big snow of 1940. Bob, how much did it snow at 40? You remember?
Oh, gosh, it was
3 feet,
24 inches, 24.
40-some inches of snow,
Yeah.
something like that. And that was in January of 40. So the old timers always talk about, oh, the big snow of 40. I'm thinking, well, I wonder if all that snow melted and flooded from. Well, I looked it up, and actually the flood of 1940 came in the fall. So they weren't connected. It just so happened we had a big snow and a big flood in 40. But this is what they call the big flood of 40. Without me, it got up to about the hubcaps of the cars. And they for 20-some years talked about the big flood. But today now it's not unusual to see water there in 3rd Street. But quickly, Farmville Herald ran this recently in the paper. Scenes from 1940. And this picture was taken, you look right there, that's the old Cumberland Bridge made out of steel. And these people would have been walking about in front of Colston's and Taylor Manufacturing, going that way into Farmville, which you can see is knee deep. But to them at that time it was a big flood. There's another close-up of it. This was taken right there at Plank Road, Kilcal Laundry became Price Supply Company. Again, it's not quite up to the person's knees there. Here you go, Caroline, there's a picture of your father in front of Taylor Manufacturing Company. The crowd had gathered there in 1940. There's Mr. Taylor, Robert, with some things over his legs, and he's sweeping the flood waters away from Taylor Manufacturing Company front door. In 72, it would have probably been right there on. So, this picture was taken from the shoe factory area, looking northward. Then there's the bridge down there. This old building right here was right behind the shoe factory, but it's since been torn down. But you can see the water is across North Main Street there. And again, here's the shoe factory building, that building we just looked at. There's the bridge. This building here was also torn down, I guess, by Dick Crawley of the town, and that's basically where you now see the first Friday event happening.
Jimmy,
Yes,
what was that little thin building?
behind the shoe factory.
The one that,
Right behind the factory.
where First Fridays is now? What?
I always figured it was part of the tobacco industry.
Okay. It doesn't have,
The Paulette building. And I think the town and Dickie kind of got together and decided it was anyway.
okay. Get that.
Yes, so it's gone. This picture hasn't been taken from the railroad crossing up on High Bridge Trail, looking over to Cumberland Bridge. So that's a good picture of the old bridge.
I lived on River Road. It came to my back door, flooded my neighbors.
So you were there in 1940?
No, we're not going to 40, 1972.
Okay.
1972 is when I saw him, not that old.
Yeah. Here's another picture taken from, evidently from up on the railroad tracks, behind Red Trail. And
Daddy said they were approaching, that's how they got to Taylor Manufacturing Company, is they crawled over
Right.
across the railroad tracks
Yes.
to get to it, to get to Highland to come in.
Dr. Turner walked across in 72 and delivered a baby, right? And as I recall, I used to play around on the railroad tracks when I was little, and if I'm not mistaken, when you went over the bridge, you looked down, you could see the water, couldn't you? There wasn't any bottom to it, it was just two rails and some wooden things. It was scary to walk over it in normal times. I can imagine trying to go over it when all that flood water was there. But Henry Fulcher was here a couple of months ago, and he talked about, he walked from Farmville over to the other side to get to work. And John here said he came over to deliver a baby.
It was
So-
John and Dr. Lavana and my dad.
Okay.
Well, I remember, I was 8 when that happened, 8 years old. But I remember walking down to that part and seeing the flood, and I remember those three walking that railroad track. We used to worry about them. I don't know if y'all knew we were worried about y'all. That was pretty impressive.
Yes. I wouldn't have done it, but I
You would have, you had to deliver that baby.
could have been my baby. Who knows? But anyway, I looked in the Farmville Herald. You know, you can look at the Heralds now online, and it said there were 2 babies born on the 20th and one on the 21st, and it gave the family's name. Was it a girl? You remember? You don't remember? So we might have the name of the family who had the baby that day. Because it was published. Back in those days, the Farmville Herald put everything in the paper. If you broke your knee, they put it in the paper. You know, so. But anyway, here's the back of the shoe factory. There's the building that Barbara was talking about that got torn down. And this was probably some kind of storage for tobacco also. But just another picture of the bridge. Same, this picture came in with those other 1940 pictures, but this is over on 3rd Street. This is taken from the Main Street side, looking up towards the post office up here. Years later, the A&P was in here. This is today Marcadu's, and this here is the visitor center, and you may not recognize it because it had a front porch on it. Then the highway came through and widened the street, and it took all the front porches off of the houses. But you can see it's not very deep there. I mean, they thought it was real deep. But in 72, it would have been over these kids' heads right there. We'll see that in a minute. There's a good picture of Marcadu's. At one time, Marcadu's was a funeral home. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
So I guess when they were working on the people, the stuff just went in the creek. The people downstream got to enjoy it. But anyway, this gas station here became Bill Christian's. Here's a good picture of the front porch on the visitor center. In 72, the water was up over that porch there. Skipped 72, I'm going back to that in a second, but 96, this was Hurricane Fran, I believe.
Yeah.
The gas was $1.14. It's not, I mean, we've seen seen it in the street like this several times lately in the last couple of years. But you can see how the water had been a little bit higher and gradually creeped on back down. But this is mild. Everybody would have thought this was a terrible flood until 72. Now you look at that and think, not too bad. But that's 96, and that's really big. Since then, we really haven't had anything really bad. It's calmed down, I guess you could say. As pointing out the gas
Didn't the
price.
watershed project help some?
I don't know, it may
You know,
have
there's so
that.
many little lakes around that are watershed projects that they built dams to slow it up.
Yeah, my question is, the lakes are full all the time, so
Yeah.
they're gonna, you'd almost have to drain them before it started raining
Yeah.
to catch the rain. So I don't know. I just don't know. Dr. Ray Moore, the visitor center building, his dad did, and then he did. And they had a doctor's office there. And when he sold it to the town about this time, he said he should have gotten more money for it because it was lakefront property. That's in the Farmville article here. But, and this is in 96. They had built the carpet house next to Dowdy Furniture. And no sooner they got it built, they got it in and filled with carpet. Every year or so it started flooding. So Mr. Dowdy went in this building, if you look at it close sometime, and he raised the floor level, 4.5 concrete. Must have raised it about 3 or 4 feet in there. Carpet house went back in there again, filled it with carpet, operated, daggone it, didn't flood again. So finally Bobby pulled out of there and went up here on the hill and built a new place and abandoned that building. But this is 96, but in 72 the water was up over top of these words, the spelling dates. So it shows you the difference. Another picture from 96. Another picture from 96. I think these are the last 2 photos from 96. So I'll go back and see what we have in 72. What I wanted to say here was, as many of you recall, WFLO during the 60s and 70s and 80s had these mobile units, they called them. They had Jeeps, then they had 4-door Jeep, and they got this little Corvette van that they would go around if there was a fire or anything spectacular, they would pull up and report on it. Well, in 72, they were really the only source that everybody had to know what was going on. So if you tuned into the radio, they kept all day long, every day for a week, they were